Before Edvard Munch created his iconic motifs such as melancholy, the scream, puberty, or Madonna, he embarked on a path from naturalistic landscape painting to symbolic, psychological landscapes. This transition can be observed in his early works from the 1880s, which is precisely what we will explore here. His early as well as his late works were often overshadowed by the creative peak of his symbolist period in the 1890s and thus rarely received sustained attention. Starting in 1881, Munch enrolled at the Royal School of Art and Design in Christiania, modern-day Oslo, where he received drawing instruction from the painter Christian Krohg, one of the leading exponents of naturalism in Norway. Christian Krohg's subjects range from fishing families to prostitutes, as seen in his large-scale painting Albertine, as well as scenes from the everyday life of the working class. Munch, born in 1863, also focused during his early years on naturalistic landscapes and portraits of family and friends. He painted, for instance, a genre-like scene of his brother Andreas reading, a motif he would return to 50 years later, as well as images of his sister Inger by the window. Munch's life and family were overshadowed by illness and death from early on. His mother died of tuberculosis when he was still a child, as did his sister Sophie at the age of 15, a traumatic loss that led to one of his first major works, The Sick Child. His father also suffered from depression, as did his sister Laura, who was repeatedly institutionalized. Munch himself struggled with psychological issues throughout his life, eventually leading to his own hospitalization. Yet this inner turmoil is not immediately visible in his early work. It remains concealed, as in the lesser-known painting Music on Karl Johann Street, completed in 1889. Munch himself described it as a processing of a childhood memory of his father. I only painted the memory without the details that I no longer saw. Hence the simplicity of the images, the apparent emptiness. I painted the impressions from my childhood, the blurred colors of past times, wrote Munch. At first glance, the painting seems rooted in the spirit and the zeitgeist of the late 19th century. We see bourgeois figures strolling, but also hints of social inequality during the street music parade on Karl Johann Street, one of Oslo's most famous boulevards. The brushwork appears of its time as well. The influence of the Impressionists is unmistakable. But on closer inspection, ruptures and contradictions begin to emerge, particularly in the painting style. The music parade is painted very vaguely, the instruments rendered through reflections of light, the children vaguely indicated as well. Meanwhile, one figure stands out, a gentleman whose face is depicted almost naturalistically, with precise highlights on his glasses and moustache, and also with a subtle flush in his red cheeks. Below, however, a striking contrast appears. The boy with the red umbrella seems to have been added later, painted in a flat, stylized manner that clashes with the realism of the gentleman above. One may ask, is this boy Edvard Munch himself? And could the man be his father? Is the young Munch being pushed to the margin by a dominant paternal figure? And is this painting truly a memory? The contradictions go beyond style. The scene doesn't quite resemble a naturalistic depiction of a music parade on Karl Johann Street, nor does it become a symbolic urban landscape. It appears suspended between the two. The painting resists identification with any specific season or weather. The sun seems to shine, yet there's a puddle on the ground. Some people wear light summer clothing while others are bundled in coats. It feels as though Munch reconstructed this day in his studio, a final tribute to his father shortly before his death. This aligns with Munch's statement, "I do not paint what I see, but what I saw." Following a successful exhibition in 1889, Munch received a grant to study in Paris, where he was briefly exposed to the Impressionist influences that temporarily shaped his painting. But the death of his father cast a shadow over his day. In 1892, he returned to the Karl Johann motif with a drastically different image, Evening on Karl Johann Street, one of the earliest works belonging to his monumental project, The Frieze of Life. The boulevard is now shown from the opposite direction, its perspective alarmingly compressed. The contrast to music on Karl Johann Street is stark and reveals how much Munch's internal state had come to shape his perception of the external world. The painting is charged with anxiety and despair, a mood he would continue to explore throughout the Frieze of Life, culminating in the Scream. The approaching crowd seems threaten both the viewer and Munch himself, as if they might trample him or infect him with some nameless illness. Munch planned the painting with sketches and a journal entry in which he describes the scene. All the passerbys looked at him strangely, and he felt their gaze, their staring, all those faces, pale in the evening light. He tried to hold on to a thought but could not. He felt as though his head was empty, and then he tried to fix his gaze on a window high above. But again the passerbys interrupted. He trembled all over, sweat broke out on his body. From these states of minds would emerge the Frieze of Life, that monumental cycle in which Munch wove his personal history into the great themes of modernity, love, fear, death, and loneliness. The symbolic landscape gives way to psychic projection. No longer does the location take center stage, but rather the emotional experience that overlays it. Munch's images are not representation of the world, but conditions of the self, reflected in a dissolving reality. Thus, the Frieze of Life does not begin with a story, but with a sensation that covers the visible like a translucent veil, and from then on permeates everything. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like it, make sure to click the like button and maybe take a look around on the channel and maybe even subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye bye.